that we all so that we get the opportunity to be able to listen to Mr. Soares. So if you let me share my screen in a minute, and we can just get on with this. Okay, can anybody confirm if you can see my screen? Anybody, please?
I can see
You
your screen.
can. Brilliant.
Yes, we
All
can.
right. So good, good,
Yes,
good.
sir.
So yes, thank you very much once again, everyone. This is great to be here. Mr. Soares is here. He's an extremely qualified professional, a global one, for that particular matter. So, Mr. Soares, can you please drop your LinkedIn profile in the chat room so that a lot of people can follow you as a person? I will speak about my own side, and I'll bring you in about 15 minutes thereabout as it is. But please drop your link. A lot of people, you should follow him. He is going to provide his own thoughts, his own insights, and he's going to share his own experience working for a national organization that deals in with regards to fraud and scams and all sorts of other things. Once again, I'm Dr. Orlando Odejide. I lead the business of A4S in different countries that we play and that we exist in. Yeah, so I lead our business in different locations, and once again, it's my pleasure to be here. So this is I'm going to be looking at an ISO standard. There is an ISO standard for fraud control. A lot of people do not know that, and I wish every bank, every insurance company, every telecommunications provider will be looking to adopt this particular standard. A lot of people don't even know that this particular standard does exist. So, it's one thing for you to put in fraud mechanisms in your organization. It is something else for you to get an independent person and an independent organization to come to review and validate what it is that you have put in place. So I'm going to speak about this very quickly. But before then, once again, this is our organization. Our organization is called A4S. I'm certain we've worked for all the banks in the country in one capacity or the other. We've also worked for at least half of the banks in Ghana in one capacity or the other. So there's quite a bit that we do as an organization. So you will see we do a lot of things around governance, risk, type things like corporate governance, risk, compliance, anti-bribery, fraud management, and even project management. We also do a lot of IT audit and assurance, and then we're very big on sustainability and then quality, health, and safety. So these are the four categories of things that we do. We're primarily an ISO company. That's what we do. We do ISO standards. We help organizations, we advise them, and we independently review what it is that they're put in place relative to different areas of work. So once again, that's who we are. We do these sessions every month. Every month we would have at least one webinar. So when you go on the team, I'm sure they'll share some links in the chat room where you can follow us on YouTube, you can follow us on social media. We're always doing one thing or the other every month. Every month there's something that we're doing. So it's good that you follow us and that you're in our database. We can invite you, we can bring you in as often as we have something to do, which, as I said, is at least once every month. We have a big team that is behind us. So, it's sometimes I'm the visible face of the organization, but I'm not the only person that works in the organization. This is just a small cross section of some of the people that work with us as an organization. We're very big in Ghana, so our work spans beyond just Nigeria. Our work spans all the way into into Ghana as it is. So yes, it's definitely great for us to be, for you to be with us here today. So this is my focus, right? The final document is not out, but if you're like me that works with a lot of ISO standards, you will see that you'll get like a snippet or an insight into what exactly is happening relative to each of the standards. So yeah, so you can this is what I'm going to be talking about, and it's good and it's important. It's good and it's important that organizations align to this international standard for fraud management. I don't, because of time, I don't want to spend too much time here, but it's a big deal. If you speak to anybody in the banking industry, I spoke with somebody yesterday night, the biggest challenge is around fraud management. I spoke to somebody in insurance about 2 weeks ago when I was giving a keynote to the entire insurance industry. One of the big challenges that they're dealing with is fraud. I mean, fraud is it's such a big deal in modern day. So everybody really has to think about what is this? How is it affecting our own organization? Because irrespective of the kind of organization that you run, you're going to have to face this. You're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to address this. And this in itself is a part of corporate governance. This in itself is a part of corporate governance. I was doing something on compliance. So maybe Oyinkan, if you can find the link, I don't know, maybe you can speak with Bodu. You can send the link on compliance. And Nigeria is in the gray list. And one of the things that makes Nigeria in that gray list of the FATF gray list, somebody can look for that for the latest version of the gray list, is also because of the amount of fraud that is perpetrated directly from the country or and within the country, and even the things that are associated with our country that we don't even have any business with. You know, when you want to do fraud, it's good that you kind of associate with Nigeria. People will even think that you're a good fraudster, though the person that is even sending the email might be somewhere in Russia in itself. So once again, this is a big deal, and I think every organization should worry about fraud. Every organization should put something in place with regards to fraud. Right? Um, I like this. I like this slide, everybody. This is according to the international standard, right? I've highlighted some places in here that I think are important for everybody. So intentional dishonest act. I like that. It's an intentional dishonest act, right? It's also deliberate falsifications, concealment, and destruction, right? Or use, right? So this is a very important slide. I think it's a slide everybody should look at and that everybody should worry about because it's important. It's important that we get this right. And so it talks about fraudulent conduct, involve internal and external parties. You know, that's the other thing. A lot of people think that fraud is only perpetrated by Yahoo boys, so to speak, but not realizing that fraud can also be internal. In fact, there's a lot of fraud that is internal. In fact, in the banking industry, they'll tell you that that there's a lot of collaboration that must happen before fraud can actually take place. So you have to think about the multidimensional uh, aspect of fraud in itself. And you can also see on my screen when he talks about external fraud and he also discusses internal fraud. I'm very worried of time, so let me come straight here, which is like the key portion. So you can see in here that it's a full-blown system, right? Everybody. So there's no organization in definitely in West Africa that has put in a fraud control management system. Even the standard is brand new. So nobody is really thinking along this line right now. And this is what organizations should do to put in a complete management system around fraud. This is not just to train people, this is not just to put in mechanisms for fraud, but to ensure that the organization has adopted an entire management system for fraud. So you can see clause 4, you can see, look at number 5 under clause 4, and that's something that is very important that you take into consideration. Number 5, how do you do fraud risk assessment? Something that a lot of people don't know, something that a lot of people are unfamiliar with, something that a lot of people do not take into consideration. How do you do fraud risk assessment in itself? If you look at under number 5, it talks about uh, the second box there. I forgot to label it. I will label it. That talks about the governance body and how they are seeing fraud within the organization in itself. If you also see, look at number 6, look at the second thing on that row for number 6. It talks about the fraud control objectives and how to achieve them, the plans that should be put in place to be able to achieve them. If you look at number 7, it talks about, competent employment process. And then he even talks about various resources that you need. If you look at 9.1, it talks about how exactly do you put in KPIs for fraud management. So this whole fraud management system is a big deal. If I try to, this in itself is like a 3-day training, right? And we're happy to work with different people, organizations on training companies on this in itself. That how do you put in place an entire management system around fraud, not just specific interventions. That's what people do. They do one intervention here, another intervention there, but that's not equal to putting in place a complete fraud management system. The other thing that I've highlighted here is clause 8 in the standard, everybody. So I like this portion because it talks about, look at the first layer that I've colored in green. It talks about how do you prevent fraud? Because that's your best approach. And I see a lot of organizations, they focus on how to respond to fraud events. But according, because this is an international standard, right? It's taking an international approach to this work. It starts from prevention in itself before it goes to detection, and then before it goes to responding to the fraud events. So the recommendation here is actually very clear. Start from preventing fraud. The banks, the insurance companies, the telecommunications providers, the bureau de change, the pension company. It doesn't matter. The telecom the manufacturing organization. All of us should start from preventing fraud before we then go to focus on detecting fraud and how do we respond. Now, if a lot of organizations follow this sequence, we will definitely have fewer fraud situations. If you put in place those 10 things from a prevention perspective, you put in about 9 things from a detection perspective, then they've highlighted 20 different things from a response perspective: prevention, detection, and how do you respond. So I can't speak about this too much. Otherwise, I'll wait to take all the time in the world. And even I'm extremely interested in listening to Mr. Soares. But everybody should take one thing away. Organizations need to implement a fraud control management system. It's an ISO standard. I didn't develop it. It's not developed by just one guy somewhere. This is a global standard that all organizations should put in place.
Viviana,
Right? Right?
Viviana,
Lastly, right? Can you please let me mute that person, please? Lastly, there's also a document that I'm very familiar with. Is a document for digital forensics and digital evidence. A lot of people don't even know because, as I said, as an organization, our specialization is ISO standards, the advising organizations and also reviewing them and training them relative to ISO standards. So that's our day job as an organization. So if you look in here, you will see there's a standard. It's not even a new standard. It's been reviewed over and over again, and it's still found to be appropriate. I've spoken to the police, I've spoken to customs, I've spoken to different organizations that are now how they need to be trained and how they need to adopt this particular standard. You know, the biggest challenge, and once again, Mr. Suarez will share his thoughts and his opinion. The biggest challenge when it comes to a lot of these things is the fact that when we take our evidence to court, we've missed out one thing or the other, especially things around the chain of custody, and our evidence is not admissible in court. So that's a big deal. Yeah, I mean, so if you look in here, it's once again, it's a big management, it's a big standard. So you will see it talks about, you know, you can't treat digital evidence anyhow, or you can't even treat evidence at all. But the focus here is on digital evidence. So if you look at 5.2, it talks about three principles of digital evidence. Is it relevant? Is it reliable? And is it sufficient? Right. And when I've done these kinds of work for organizations, everything just falls apart. As I said, I've also done a lot of training for the police in the past. This is really where they need to be trained. This is where they need to become experts. If you go to 5.3, it says the requirements for handling digital evidence. So if you look at those things under 5.3, a lot of people miss these things out: auditability, reportability, reproducibility, and justifiability. A lot of organizations, and then look at the four steps under 5.4. How do you identify evidence? What is the proper approach to the collection of evidence? What is the proper approach to the acquisition of evidence, and how do you preserve evidence? This is where it all falls apart, right? This is where it all falls apart. Mr. Suarez is also a member of, is it CIARB, for arbitration, and I've also been involved in one or two things with them in the past, and I'm telling you that most government institutions that gets involved with this, they get it wrong somewhere. So that chain of custody, everybody, if you can see 6.1, is a place where a lot of organizations miss it. And if the lawyer calls someone like myself as an expert witness, or to bring me in as a subject matter expert, I would typically be able to flaw something that the client, that the official entity in the country has done wrong relative to how they either identified, collected, acquired, or even preserved the evidence. And that's where the judge or the court will throw some of these things out. So it's important that all of us, we understand these things and that we take them into keen consideration. I would like to stop here because I mean, my highlight was this, and I think if you can take a screenshot here. If you take this page away, two key things from my session. Number one is every organization needs to implement 37003. Every organization, government institution, private institutions, it doesn't matter what kind of institution, they should implement this fraud control management system. Further to that, a lot of organizations and a lot of people need to be trained specifically on this 27037 that talks about, because most of the evidence in modern day is digital. And when you see the way confiscation is being done, you will see that, by the time somebody subjects these things to international best practice, there will be something that has already gone wrong in terms of how the organization has done these things. All right. Once again, thank you very much. I'll bring in Mr. Suarez now. Mr. Suarez, I've told a lot of people to follow you on LinkedIn. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, and we will listen to you for the next 30 minutes, and then we'll take questions from different people. So once again, everybody, please welcome with me our global expert, Mr. Suarez, who we are completely happy to have on the call. Mr. Suarez, please go ahead, share your screen, and take it all from here, Mr. Adebayo Soares. Thank you very much, sir. You need to unmute.
Yes, yes, I've
Okay,
done that.
brilliant.
Thank you very much. I don't know if
Okay.
everybody can hear me and see me. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody see me and hear me?
We can see you and we can hear you, sir.
Okay. Can you also see my screen? Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Adebayo Soares. I specialize in counter fraud, counter cybercrime, and anti-corruption. And I have over a decade of experience in this area of my career. Without wasting time, I'll be talking to you about combating scams and fraudsters in public and private institutions. Can I go on? Can everybody hear me? Can you just say hi or raise your hand if you cannot hear me? Okay, just to know. So I don't get speaking to myself. Yeah. So we're talking about combating scams and fraudsters in public and private institutions. From my perspective as a certified fraud examiner, okay, my volume is actually at its highest. Maybe I should disconnect from.
No audio. Can you hear me now, please? Can you signify if you can hear me now? Just somebody say something in the chat. Okay. Okay, so is it better now? Is it good? All right. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll go on now. So for me, when we talk about fraud, let me take it up from where Dr. Orlando stopped. He talked about fraud management. And for me, I believe that whatever you don't manage will definitely go out of hand. It will surpass you and it will overwhelm you when problem comes. So for every problem or every situation or every even relationship, you need to have relationships. If not, they're going to go out of hand. So it brings us back to the issue of fraud as well. And talking about the ISO standards that Dr. Orlando mentioned as well. I mean, for me, they assure three things. They assure efficiency of an organization, they assure safety of an organization, and also an organization will deliver quality services and products if you follow the ISO standards. So I think you should all look it up as recommended by Dr. Orlando in his opening remarks and statements. So for me, we all talk about fraud every time, and I believe that because a lot of organizations, be it public or private institutions, you need to achieve your objective through individuals, I mean human beings. So that's why I'm introducing by saying that for as long as organizations would rely on human beings to achieve their goals in a variety of sectors, definitely fraud and other deviant behaviors are unavoidable due to socioeconomic, individualistic, and systematic factors. You look at socioeconomic factors, for example, we know that Nigeria is a difficult country to live in right now. People are complaining of poverty, lack of money, lack of food. That's socioeconomic because if you put a person that undergoing a socioeconomic problem, for example, in an organization, there will be tendency for fraud to come because of pressure. Individualistic as well. People have personal problems and challenges, and these persons are employees in either a private or public institution. They can resort to fraud as well. And also systemic factors, which is similar to socioeconomic factors. Systemic factors, let's take it to the organization not performing, maybe not having a fraud management system, for example. That's a systemic problem because fraud will definitely thrive in that kind of organization. But regardless of the fact that organizations rely on human beings to carry out their goals and achieve its functions, it doesn't mean that fraud should be thriving in an organization. It doesn't mean that organizations cannot deploy mechanisms or ways or systems or measures to be able to mitigate fraud or even eradicate it to the barest minimum. So the aim and objective of this my presentation is to illustrate some of the common fraud schemes and scams experienced by public-private institutions in Nigeria, highlight some common ways in which public and private institutions contribute to the success of fraudsters, and also highlight some of the importance of combating fraud scams and fraudsters as well. And I'll give you some recommended actionable solutions that can help such institutions to prevent and mitigate fraud and stop fraudsters as well. So you hear situations like scams and fraudsters. everybody says scam, romance scam, love scam. Everything is scam, but you find out that scam is just a social term used to describe dishonesty and deception. So basically, scam is a social term. It's more like a slang that we all develop. But regardless, it means dishonesty, a plan to make money or gain an advantage, particularly one that involves tricking people. But the legal term for scam, because as professionals and as depending on the field that you are in and what you do in your organization, or you just want to learn about this topic or how to stop fraudsters, which is important for everybody because anybody could be a victim of fraud or fraudsters. The legal term for scam is called fraud and is a wrongful or criminal deception intended for financial or personal gain. You see, the word criminal deception is very clear because when you use the word criminal, it means that it is a crime. And in Nigeria and in a lot of other countries in the world, fraud is criminalized in various penal laws. If you look at Section 419, if you remember in Nigeria, the phrase 419 is always very popular. People say 419, 419, 419, and you realize that a lot of people do not even know that it is a section of the law in the criminal code, one of the very first and foremost criminal laws in Nigeria that encompasses all. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm getting a message that my voice is a bit low. Can you all
Oh,
still?
no, 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 no. That was before. You're clear, Mr. Cyrus. You're
Oh, okay.
actually
Thank you.
crystal. You're crystal
Thank you.
clear.
And my slides are very clear for everybody to see, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. So, Section 419 of the Criminal Code of Nigeria is the first law in Nigeria that criminalized fraud, what we call scam. And if you look at Section 1 of the Advanced Fraud and Other Related Offences Act as well of 2006, you find that fraud, specifically that law was created to criminalize all forms of fraud that you may encounter on the stage, either as an individual or as an institution. And you find the word obtaining by false pretense. So the false pretense, anything false is deceptive. It means it's a lie, dishonesty. That's the main word. And you look at who a fraudster is. It follows ordinarily. A fraudster is a person who commits fraud, especially in a business transaction within an organization or in other personal contexts. We are talking about institutions right now. That is why we are seeing the word within an organization. And also you can find fraudsters in business transactions as well. In my experience and my line of work, I see a lot of petitions, of course, individuals reporting other individuals who demonstrated fraudulent activities, fraudulent intentions as well in the course of business transactions. And they felt like they've been scammed, in quote. So, and also in a personal context, you may discuss with people and or a person, and you realize that there's some dishonesty or there's some unclear terms, misrepresentation of facts, just in personal relationships, personal interaction with individuals. They give that tendency that they could be fraudsters as well. So it's an indication. So for me, I believe that before you can understand something or solve a problem, if you go back to fraud management mentioned by Dr. Orlando, you would realize that fraud management simply means how an organization will manage fraud. Definitely, what is your plan? What is your strategy? How do you respond to fraud? How do you prevent it? But you cannot prevent or manage what you do not understand its workings. That is why we are bringing you here to talk about the anatomy of fraud before we move on. And to understand the anatomy of fraud, which means that the workings of fraud, how do fraudsters act? What is their drive? What is their motive? What are the incentives? What's the pressure? So you look at a very popular concept or theory that was developed by David Cressy, a criminologist, long time ago. He talked about the fraud triangle, developed it, and he helps to explain the workings of fraud and the factors that lead to fraud and unethical behavior within institutions, that is public and private institutions. And it has three main elements. I'm sure some of us here who are certified fraud examiners or who have been abreast with fraud topics will surely have heard of the fraud triangle as well. So can we help mute the person? Thank you. So we have three elements: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. We talked about factors that may make people commit fraud. You talked about socioeconomic factors, systemic factors, and personal factors as well. So all these will be in form of pressure. You see, fraudsters need pressure to engage in fraudulent activity. Pressure could be financial pressure. It could be pressure from peer pressure because you see, talk about cybercrime, which you can also call cyber fraud. You see most of the use in Nigeria these days is peer pressure. So they become fraudsters. They engage in cyber fraud activities because they're going through the peer pressure, societal pressure. You want to live lavish life. You want to be able to acquire things that are not yet time for you to acquire. So that's some form of pressure. Even in an organization, a lot of pressure can be experienced by employees that drives them to commit fraud. Now, opportunity as well. Talk about fraud management again, which is very, very core to all this conversation. In an organization where fraud is not managed and you don't have a blueprint on how to respond or prevent fraud, definitely there will be opportunities for employees who experience pressure to commit fraud. So as we go on, you will see how opportunity can be created for fraudsters to thrive in an organization. And also rationalization. You see, there is no fraudster or criminal of any category that you speak to that would not say, this is why I did it. It doesn't have to make sense. That's one thing about rationalization. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody, but to the fraudster, it makes sense that this is why I did it. And whether the fraudster feels remorseful or not is personal, but there's always a reason, a fraudster, the motive why the fraudster did it. So they try to justify engaging in fraudulent activities or committing a crime, which is just easy. So this is an image of the fraud triangle, which is the fraud triangle theory. You see pressure here, you're trying to meet targets, you have financial stress. Then from there, it takes you to opportunity. Imagine an organization having weak internal controls or lack of oversight. You look at that, let's talk about lack of oversight. Your supervisor is not performing his supervisory duties. Of course, a subordinate can take advantage of that. Maybe there are levels of approval. And as a supervisor, you're supposed to sign off or approve a payment, for example, to a vendor, but you entrust your subordinate to go and do it. How are you even sure that there's any procurement occurring or taking place at that time? So money can be approved, and the employee on the experiencing financial stress or pressure can take advantage of the lack of the oversight, which is the opportunity to commit fraud. Then you come to rationalization, weak controls as well. First, I can tell you, well, there were weak controls in the organization, so that's why I took advantage of it. Lack of oversight, again, that is why I did it, because there was lack of oversight. So, I mean, I had the opportunity, and that's why I did it. Or maybe I'm going through financial pressure. I need to pay some bills. My kids are not in school. The salary you pay me is not enough to meet up with my daily needs. And that is why I committed fraud. That's another rationalization. It doesn't have to make sense because there is no justification for engaging in fraudulent activity or committing crime. Are we together? Do we have any questions so far? Please, you can drop your questions in the chat box. But I hope everybody is still hearing me and seeing the slides, right?
Yes, we can, sir. So once again, we encourage everybody, just like to put your questions in the chat room so that we can reserve everything for the end as it is. So people also talk about motive, opportunity, and means. Here we're talking about opportunity, pressure, and rationalization. So all those things, everybody just drop them so that we don't disturb. Is that how we don't disturb Mr. Soares? And at the end, all of us will speak with him. All right? Good. Thank you.
What's the problem now?
So I told you earlier that we'll be talking about some of the common fraud schemes in public and private institutions. So the most important one, and one of the very common one, is asset misappropriation. If you've been in the counter fraud industry or anti-fraud industry, you'll have heard this a lot. Big grammar, but it's just easy. You call a lot of things, they look like they're very big. Asset misappropriation, you wonder, what is it? It simply means that an employee converts or diverts the asset of an organization to personal use or personal gain. And it could happen as easy as when an employee uses the official vehicle of an organization for private gain or private use. That's asset misappropriation. You're using it for the wrong reason, for the wrong objective. And you find a lot of employees saying there is nothing there. There is nothing there. I mean, I'm just using the vehicle. Or you find an employee taking money, theft as well as asset misappropriation, taking money that belongs to the organization and say, I'll give it back. I mean, that's misappropriation because the money of your organization or your institution is not meant for you to use for your own personal need for any reason. Corruption and bribery, this is what everybody knows in Nigeria because Nigeria never does well when it comes to corruption rating in any way, be it for perception index or experience-based survey for corruption. I tell you, Nigeria never does well. So what is corruption exactly? Everybody thinks corruption has to do with only when money is involved. But for me, I say corruption beyond abusing entrusted power for personal gain. I believe that corruption as well is about gaining on unfair advantage in any way. exam malpractice is corruption, however you want to look at it. But bringing us back to institutions, you find or you read about a lot of cases being handled by law enforcement, like EFCC and ICPC, for example. You see public office holders, even private persons. You see bank CEOs and MDs being tried and prosecuted for corruption, which is a private and public institution in the government. You can remember the case of the former accountant general. You can see the huge amount of money that he diverted to personal use, building complexes and a lot of buildings all around Nigeria for a public officer. That's a clear case of corruption. If you remember some bank CEOs, I do not want to mention names, but you can read up that have been prosecuted by EFCC, and some of them have been jailed as well. Let's go to procurement fraud. Every organization in Nigeria is a procuring entity because whatever you do, you need stationaries, you need equipment, you need a lot of items, you need equipment, you need tools. So you have to source, you have to buy, you have to entrust some of your employees. You create a procurement department or unit for you to carry out those activities. And here you find out organizations, a lot of them are being defrauded by this scheme. You can see bid tailoring. You can see insiders in the department giving information of bids to potential contractors or vendors. That is fraud. You can see insiders, that is employees working with vendors to supply substandard items, which is not what is the bill of quantity. You can imagine that, or the quotation as well, inflating prices of items to be sourced in the market, different forms or types of schemes in the public sector. Look at theft and stealing. That is really clear. Stealing means that you take an item that does not belong to you and to deprive the owner of it permanently, which is very clear. So forgery as well. You see a lot of organizations, a lot of documents are being forged. And one of the common ones we see that people don't pay attention to, you see a lot of employees forging certificates, maybe your degree, maybe some of your qualifying documents, credentials. As easy as that, that is a scheme because you're going to be, you're a fraudster in that regard because that is deception and that is criminal. You see organizations where an employee travels for official duty and comes back to make some financial claims for money that you spent personally and they were also spent on the activity of the organization, where you're claiming that you spent it on the activity of the organization. That is fraud. And you forge invoice, you forge receipts, you forge claim documents saying that you spent that money. It's called, you mischaracterize the expenses as if it was spent for official activity, whereas you spent it for yourself, maybe while you were on vacation. Payroll fraud as well. In a lot of public institutions in Nigeria, you read of the cases of ghost workers, ghost employees. When the federal government introduced IPPIS, the integrated payroll system, I mean, millions and millions of ghost workers, ghost public and civil servants were identified. And you ask yourself, how did the names of these persons get into the payroll of the government? It was simply because there were fraudulent employees in the government, in the public sector, who are putting names of families and friends. And some of them do not even exist. And they claim this money. You look at a fraudulent expenditure claim, that's forged receipt to claim travel and accommodation expenses. And tax evasion, you may ask yourself, how does tax evasion fall in here? But for me, I'll simply tell you that tax evasion is usually being committed by organizations through their employees, because a company, be it private, mostly private organizations, institutions, cannot evade tax if their employees do not assist, because companies are artificial organizations, artificial beings. So they act through the natural persons that work there, maybe directors or maybe chief financial officer. So companies evade tax as well, which is fraud because it's a crime in Nigeria against the federal government, mostly done by private institutions. Money laundering as well. You find out that a lot of companies that are registered in Nigeria are registered for the purpose of laundering money. Of course, money laundering in this regard, if you do not know, is one of the offense that is committed after a predicate offense has been committed. For example, asset misappropriation. Then you're trying to launder the money by registering several companies. You open bank accounts, and then you use the company bank accounts that you opened to launder this money. You layer the money and you introduce it back into the financial system. So as easy as that. So in this regard, most of this money that are laundered, they don't get to pay tax on it. So it comes back to issue of tax evasion as well. Cybercrime as well is a big problem for organizations as well, both public and private, because these may not occur from an insider that is an employee. It may be an external attack. You look at business email compromise, you look at data theft as well. So this is another big problem for organizations because hacking these days has become the order of the day. Most organizations leverage technology to perform their duties to achieve their goals. And if there's no strong cyber security system or measures in place, definitely you can easily be attacked by cyber criminals. And business email compromise is simply committed through phishing. You know, you get a link from an unknown source, but known to you without cybersecurity training. You click it, and that is it. It may be through, it may be a malware that you do not know that gives remote access to your systems and your finances. And before you know, money is missing. A lot of companies have been defrauded through BEC schemes, which is really, really a problem for organizations. Now, common fraud indicators and red flags. If you go through pressure in an organization as an employee, maybe the MD or the chief financial officer, pressure, any kind of pressure, internal pressure, external pressure. Internal pressure can come from your supervisors or from your immediate bosses to commit an act that circumvents the code of conduct, and you bow to pressure. This is a problem where there are no checks and balances. And also, if you don't comply with legislations and procedures within the institution as well. There are policies in an organization or procedures to be followed in certain instances. When you compromise it, it is an indication that fraud is occurring. This is a lot, but I will skip through some that are very, very important. And also, let me talk about employees who are dissatisfied with their jobs and compensation, salary and allowances. I chose this because a lot of organizations overlook this, either public or private institution. This is one of the main reasons a lot of employees engage in fraud and why fraudsters internally, I'm talking about internal organizations because that is majority of the problem to manage fraud. I believe that these days organizations should actually work more on robust packages for their employees. And that is when you can easily say that you have your employee having a proper mental well-being and the instances of going through financial pressure will be mitigated. You can only do your best as an organization, but I believe that this is a major problem. From all the cases I have handled from organizations where the fraudster was an employee or is an employee, when I check their pay and compare with the work that they do and the exposure that they get, I realize that there's a lot of room for pressure to come in, and all they do is to wait for the opportunity, one lapse in the organization. For example, we look at absence of internal controls, adequate internal controls, for example. When the opportunity comes, that fraudster easily just strikes the organization. And also poor IT systems and inadequate security. This can be a major challenge within an organization for attacks. I once handled a case where a young Nigerian who was a core member then served in an organization, a federal government institution, and he did an override of their systems, and he uploaded more than 20 bank accounts, and he was receiving alawi, I call it alawi, that's what we know it as, for 4 years after he passed out as a core member. Why? Because the IT system in that establishment was poor and there was inadequate security. You find people in organizations where people are always moving around, trying to take advantage of your lack of sensitivity in an organization. I believe that cybersecurity starts with physical security because you don't leave your computer unattended to. When you're leaving your system, I believe that you should always shut it down or lock it. So that's another problem. And also central decision making by ignoring segregation of duties. I've seen organizations where, for example, the logistics and the procurement unit are fused. To me, when you fuse such responsibility, it gives room for fraud. There's no checks and balance. It's like you have one individual carrying out the function of the accountant and the auditor. There are no checks and balance. A fraudster or an accountant who is a fraudster can easily cover his trails when you are not looking and there is no segregation. So also common ways in which institutions contribute to these scams, when there are weak internal controls and supervision, when you ignore low employee morale, which I talked about. Employee morale can be caused by low pay or low salary, which is very important. I mean, if you employ people to work for you, they're looking at the amount you're trying to pay them. People need money a lot, and organizations need to take that seriously. Weak internal controls, which I talked about, lack of supervision. There are no layers of authority or approval. One person cannot be in charge of approving payments. You must have layers, someone to check, double check, and recheck. And also when there are ambiguous job responsibilities, for example, which department verifies bid documents submitted by vendors. If you fuse a logistic and a procurement department together, this is going to be a problem and fraud will definitely occur or a scam will occur in an organization. unrealistic employee salary allowance, I talked about it, insufficient employee fraud awareness and training. And I believe that this goes back to fraud management, because if you have a fraud management system or proven in place, definitely you would have training and fraud awareness as part of it for your employees. I talked about lack of separation of duties. For example, if you're seeing logistics and procurement department or accounts and one department together, the non-mandatory employee leave. This is very important. You see, I don't believe anybody is indispensable in an organization. It's just for 1 month, max 20, 30 days annually. Employees that do not go on leave, as far as I'm concerned, or you as a boss, you're saying, oh, Dr. Orlando, let me say I work for Dr. Orlando. He says, oh, Soares is so good. He can't go on leave. I need him. Who will do the job? It's not true. Believe you me, everybody is human, and you can go through a pressure or any kind of situation that gives you, that tempts you or makes you want to commit fraud at a point. So, and imagine that a fraudster who never goes on leave has been committing fraud and is being encouraged by a supervisor not to go on leave because it's indispensable for his hard work. I believe that that person, while you stay and never go on leave, it gives more room to cover your tracks of your foreign activities. But when employees go on leave mandatorily, which is part of the employment terms, you can check or review the work done by that employee to see and make sure that there were no fraudulent activities being done by that employee. Vague or non-existent code of conduct. A lot of organizations, it will surprise you that their code of conduct is either not clear or they do not have one. If you don't have code of conduct, then what are the codes? What are the standards expected of your employee? It means that an employee can do whatever they like, including fraud, and get away with it. And also non-existent client or public feedback channel. A client for an organization or a public institutions, for example, a Nigerian works in there. Feedback is very important for you to check, for you to be sure of what the employees are doing. That way, you can have an idea whether there is something sketchy or fishy going on, which could be fraud, because fraud is usually the major problem in every organization, be it public or private. So the impact of fraud in public organizations, I would move faster because of time. Reputational damage in an organization where you do not combat fraud, or the impact as well. It could damage reputation, negative PR. You don't want to do business with an organization that is known for allowing fraud to thrive or fraudsters to do whatever they want without mitigating it. Loss of trust by clients or customer or public. Breach of duty of care. Look at banks, for example. Banks, when you hear that banks begin to have a lot of fraud incidents, customers begin to panic and they begin to withdraw their money. It means that their anti-fraud system is weak, discourage investors, and lack of investment. This is Nigeria's problem. The investors globally believe that Nigeria is not fighting fraud and corruption. Fraudsters have like a leeway to do whatever they want. So investors find it hard to come to Nigeria. You can also think about money laundering as well. Financial loss. A successful fraud incident in an organization brings financial loss to an organization. You get indebted and you resort to loans. I mean, organizations that keep taking loans because of fraud incidents becomes a problem. It's only a matter of days before they would wind up and never be there. Hardship as well for the clients. Imagine banks where money is being lost. This is an example at your time. You can click this link to read it. Imagine 18 billion naira annually lost to fraud in the public and private sector, majorly from procurement fraud, including procurement process, which is very humongous. That's the consequence. So you can imagine how much Nigerian public institutions lose to fraud because of procurement processes. And those are the lapses. Like Dr. Orlando said, fraud management is lacking in a lot of public institutions in Nigeria. Lawsuits as well. You don't expect Nigerians, you hear a lot of civil society organizations, they sue the Nigerian government because of lack of will, the political will to tackle fraud and corruption in the public institutions, and also private organizations as well. Their clients can sue them for losses cost for them because the organization failed to combat fraud or to stop fraudsters. So we look at the continuation of the psychological implications. You can't be mentally balanced in an organization where fraud thrives or they don't tackle fraudsters, or where law enforcement usually come to your organization for investigation on a fraud incident has occurred. It doesn't make you balanced. Psychologically, you are not balanced to do your work, definitely. If your employees are not balanced, they are not mentally fit to work because of fraud incidents, law enforcement keep coming, prosecution relating to the organization, then it's not a place where anybody wants to work. Even the objectives of the organization may be hampered by such recurrent fraud incidents. And also rising related fraud incidents as well. I mean, it's a problem when you work in an organization where there's poor ethical culture. It means that there is no big stock or big no to fraud in an organization. Anything can thrive. Psychologically, if you're somebody that has integrity, you do not want to operate in that kind of organization. And an organization may lose their best hands because they don't have fraudulent intent. They begin to have fraudsters surrounding your organization because fraudsters will want to work for as long as they can in an organization where there is poor ethical culture. Punitive implications as well. If you read this news, you click this link, you see that a lot of banks, which I use as majorly examples because they are highly and heavily regulated by CBN and SEC, for example, they suffer a lot of sanctions and monetary fines because of their failure to tackle fraud, to prevent fraud, and to stop fraudsters, for example. And punitive implications can mean it can ground the business, monetary fines. Imagine paying billions of naira because you failed to check fraud or because a fraudster was successful in one of his schemes. It becomes a problem. It affects your business, affects your PR, affects your customers as well. Then prosecution. You read in the news, you find that a lot of companies are prosecuted. Some have even been fined. Some have been wound up, all because of the consequence of fraud in their organization. So some of the importance of combating fraud and fraudsters. It's easier to detect fraud and to prevent fraud than detect fraud because you spend a lot of money investigating, you spend a lot of money and human resources trying to recover money that has been lost already. And there is no guarantee that that money lost to a successful fraud scheme or incident will be recovered. That's the problem. You can read about CBEX. Now everybody's reading about CBEX, and I can tell you, I don't know where the money will come from for those investors. And that is the problem. So you see, and that is a scheme that was perpetrated by a private organization in Nigeria. So you see, those are the things. That's another area of fraud that we should look at, investment fraud. But you check it, money is lost. So it's easier to prevent fraud than to detect fraud. In an organization where there's no fraud management, no anti-fraud plan, there are no internal controls, you begin to lose a lot of money. Then you begin to start spending extra money again, trying to detect the fraud, which you're not sure. You may know what happened and how the money was lost, but are you sure you will recover your asset? You're not sure. And fraud prevention is what we want to talk about here, which is a comprehensive strategy that is designed to identify, prevent, and mitigate fraudulent activities within an organization. So some of them include safeguarding organizational assets. This is the important thing, to safeguard your assets. When you have a preventive measure, fraud prevention plan, fraud management plan, and an anti-fraud plan in your organization, you safeguard your assets. Issues of asset misappropriation will reduce. You maintain good reputation and business integrity. And you ensure legal compliance, avoiding regulatory sanctions, which I showed you above. You attract investment. And you maintain a trusted workforce. Because when you tackle fraud and you combat fraud within your organization, it is a place that fraudsters know that they cannot thrive. They cannot stay for long undetected. They have to move. And you know that a good percentage of your workforce is a trusted workforce. It minimizes fraud incidents. So these are some of the importance of combating fraud, scams, and fraudsters in organizations. So actionable solutions, we're rounding up now, to prevent fraud, scammers, and combat fraudsters, both in public and private sectors. I believe that the first area for me, which organizations don't look at, is to know your employee and conduct pre-employment background checks. This is a lot, but I'll skip some because of time. I believe that a lot of organizations, public organizations, let me use that as an example. There are a lot of bad eggs in public institutions. That is why you go to public offices and you are being asked to pay money every time. But for me, even in private organizations, people, Nigerians working in most places, they expect you to give something. Look at the videos of immigration officers surfacing every now and then, police officers asking expatriates for money. You ask yourself, if they did a know your employee before those public officers were employed, I believe that some indicators would have been found to see that you are not fit to work. Even banks, you read about bank officials or bank employees absconding with customers' money and all that. I've done a lot of cases like that. If there were some background checks for employment screening, I believe that that kind of employee, if there were about 10, maybe the bank would have gotten rid of 8 and have only 2. It minimizes incidents of fraud. So knowing your employee, it entails doing a lot of things, not just asking questions. Where have you worked before? What have you done before? I'm hammering on this because it's going to help a lot of organizations. So I put OSINT, SOCMINT, and HUMINT, open source intelligence. That's what OSINT means. You can go online and Google that employee. Try to find some online sources. Who are you? If you put my name in Google now, you find some things about me. If I had been convicted of a crime before, you would see that information because these publications go out. A lot of ex-convicts working in sensitive organizations, public and private today, but the organizations do not know because there was no search, no pre-employment background checks. SOCMIT means social media intelligence. Run social media checks on these employees. When banks were told to start collecting social media handles of customers who are coming to open bank accounts, I liked it because I believe that a bank account should not be opened by anybody. If you have issues or you have a tainted past, a bank can refuse to open a bank account for you. And any organization can leverage that. Also, human intelligence. You want to employ me, I tell you where I believe the schools I've attended, the surroundings that I've been to. There's nothing wrong in sending an employee to interview or interact with the neighbors or talk to some people around the institution that I've attended just to know about me. I mean, I could have been a court member, you know. So schools can be able to say, do you understand? Do you want a cultist to work in your organization? Hell no. So I believe that this is very key, knowing your employee, because it will help to get rid of more than 70% of fraudsters in an organization. Know your business partners and pre-business background checks. A lot of people, organizations get into business with other partners without knowing what they do, their past. We've had cases in my past that I've handled that the problems or the issues that arose for innocent businesses, whether they conducted businesses with other companies that were involved in fraudulent activities. It could be tax evasion. So it is very important that you don't interact or you don't associate yourself with individuals or entities that have tainted past or tainted business history because it comes to affect your own organizational reputation. And also continuous anti-fraud employee training and well-being, very important. You must know what to train and who to train. If you want to conduct an anti-fraud training, you just don't talk about fraud. You should check your organization. What kind of fraud would likely occur in which department? How can it occur? You'll be able to predict, which I will show you later, how you can leverage technology and one of the systems you can use. Know what to train. Keep training your employees. No department should be left out because fraud can occur from any dimension. And you should be able to know that you've trained your employees to be able to speak up when they notice fraud incidents. I don't have to be in a department to notice fraud incidents. Fraud risk assessment, which is very key. A risk assessment is very important. It simply means as you're trying to conduct an assessment of the organization. Where and how can fraud occur? What are the risks? Is it high in this department? Is it low in this department? It gives you an idea of where to put in internal controls and countermeasures against fraud. And of course, the size of the organization, type of business, and regulatory environment are one of the factors to consider when conducting fraud risk assessment. Anti-fraud plan and strategy. This is more like fraud management. So I would just leave it, but it's very important. All staff must be aware of the procedure that an organization wants to adopt or take or respond on responding to a fraud incident. And also anti-fraud culture. You know, for me, I believe that culture is a way of life. So what is your culture? What is your way of doing things against fraud in your organization? It could be that you want to establish a communication channel for reporting fraud, and all staff will receive regular trainings. And there should be leadership committed to ethical practices in the organization. So that is your culture, your way of life. It's like you want to get married into maybe the way we do our marriages in Nigeria. I'm trying to bring cultural example into it. You must do things. When they say you go to Rome, you act like Rome because they have a culture, a way of doing things in Rome. So how do you want to respond to fraud? What do you want your environment to be like when it comes to fraud? Are you saying it's totally prohibited, zero tolerance, or do you tolerate it a little bit, or do you fully embrace it? That's what your culture is about. So how do you want your employees to see that? So strengthen internal controls, separate duties, create authorization layers. One person should not be in charge of performing 5 functions. It increases the risk for fraud in an organization. As a fraudster can thrive. Data access control. Not everybody should have access to your data. Data could mean sensitive information, bank details, invoice. It could be trade secrets as well. Trade secrets are valuable information today. A lot of people want to pay money. I used to read in the news that Pepsi, for a lot of years, they were trying to get the recipe that Coca-Cola used to use. They taste differently if you've never tried it before. So, trade secrets are very important, which today is data. Nobody keeps paper these days. So, yeah, it could be even banking information, which is very, very important. Reconciling recorded transaction activities with physical checks. These days, I work as an anti-corruption and investigation coordinator right now. And I make sure I do this every time. I don't rely on an Excel spreadsheet, for example. A data that was collected with pen and paper, then exported to a spreadsheet. I go back to verify. because you can change any information in there. You must be sure to do that. It should never be too much to be able to make sure that there is no fraud. The regular audits and reviews, sorry. Surprise audits is highly recommended in this regard. You don't tell the organization every time that you want to conduct an audit, because they will take care of whatever is wrong before you come and everything looks regular. Then you believe that there is no fraud in your organization, because there is actually no organization where fraud is not occurring. So surprise audits are very, very important. Then ethical practice and whistleblower programs. For me, I believe that every organization should have a whistleblower program. If you don't have one today, it means that employees who know that fraud are occurring in your organization, or even customers or clients or members of the public, don't have a secure way of reporting fraud or suspected fraudulent activity. Where I work right now, there's what we call Speak Up. It's totally anonymous. You just go there, put in the information, and I'll commence investigation once we look at it preliminarily, which is very easy. And if you look at other organizations, for example, the EFCC, they have the Eagle Eye app. You can just go there, report your fraud, report your complaint, very anonymous. Don't say anything, so easily, they can just easily know, okay, these are the facts. And if you're trained in your area of specialty, you can use very little information. When you combine it with logic, it becomes intelligence. Then you start your investigation if it is actionable. The ethics and integrity management programs are trained. To me, a lot of organizations focus on anti-fraud, bring an investigator, bring an auditor, but ethics and integrity management, very, very important. We just say ethics, integrity. A lot of people do not know what it entails. In the face of very tough decisions, you are about to commit fraud in your organization. You are about to do something unethical. How do you manage that pressure? How do you get past it? What are the procedures that you would adopt? A lot of organizations do not think that's important. For me, pre-employment checks and these ethics and integrity management programs and training, very, very important, because it's like the base of any anti-fraud training or fraud management training or system that they want to be put in place. So, for example, ethics ambassadors within the workplace. Organizations or systems that do not reward good work or ethical behavior. I believe that they are just working on a landmine, because I used to tell my colleagues that I would say no to a cash reward for hard work, no matter how much it is, to collect like a letter of commendation from the highest authority or a plaque. I can take it anywhere I want to go. It's better for me because I can make money anytime. And for me, it gives me a lot of a boost for me to be more ethical and have more integrity, because I cannot let the organization down. So for me, and such a person in an organization where an employee is up and doing, ethically compliant amongst the workforce, they stand out. I believe that they should be rewarded and be used as ambassadors. Ambassadors means that you represent what the company stands for, what the organization stands for, be it public or private. And when other employees or staff, they look up to that person, because believe you me, everybody wants a reward, wants an award, wants to be the exemplary one. But you find organizations, they just overlook, they just tell you, well done, well done, well done. For me, you see stories where very up and doing and efficient employees, they resort to fraud eventually. There was something missing. There was no reward. There was no appreciation. You just don't say thank you to a staff that is ethics compliant and has integrity. No, you give them an award, you reward them however you want to do it, make them be the example for everybody. And in that way, you've gotten one person out of fraudulent tendencies or becoming a fraudster, or being the catalyst for fraud to thrive in the organization, maybe being an insider for an external fraud to go. You've achieved something. And also integrity advisors. This is something I've never seen in Nigeria. You see, in Hungary, they practice this in Hungary. You can Google it. Integrity advisors, you want them to tell you how to help your employees to be better in demonstrating integrity in the face of difficult and hard situations as it affects the organization. Because to me, ethics, code of conduct, they should apply to your employee either when they're in the organization and they're outside, because everywhere they go, they carry that identity of your organization, be it public or private. So integrity advisors should be spoken to. What is your integrity plan? How do you want to deliver your integrity image? How do you want your employees to emulate the integrity plan and blueprint and image of your organization? It's something that people specialize in. And I do that as well. So I believe that organizations to begin to lean into this because integrity is the hallmark of how to counter fraud, or how to combat fraudsters. Because in the end, Dr. Orlando said that fraud cannot occur in an organization, which I agree with him. If there's nobody on the inside, there's always somebody on the inside. So when we talk about combating fraud and fraudsters, you must look inward first. Like they say, charity begins at home. Then reward staff who abide by code of ethics. I won't dwell on this. I've said it earlier. And also, to me, embrace and deploy anti-fraud technology. I'm skipping a few things now. For me, I believe that these days, fraud is no more analog anymore. And we all know. We've read about AI, machine learning. I mean, you've heard of deepfake these days. Someone can call you and start to talk to you, think that person is your boss from the office, tells you to authorize a transaction. Sounds like your boss. Even clone your boss's phone number. In the end, you bring a lot of problem and loss to the organization because you do not know. So to me, embracing and deploying anti-fraud technology is very important. There are fraud detection software. It helps you scan transactions for unusual patterns, which is very easy. Data analytics platform, it provides insight by analyzing complex data correlations. A lot of data are being exchanged these days by organizations, public or private. So when you use data analytics platforms, which I will give you links to check for the one that suits your organization and of course affordability later, it gives you insights into patterns or correlations. You'll be able to understand, is this usual, is this unusual? And also predictive analytical tools. It says it predicts potential fraud scenarios. Computers these days, you just put in the code and you set the algorithms and it begins to work. Just like AI, machine learning, everything works easy. So you look at your organization, how can fraud occur in your organization? Which units or departments are vulnerable, the risk are high? Create a scenario, put it in there. It will analyze it for you, predict futuristically, tell you this will likely happen, that will likely happen. And in that way, you can set up your fraud management system and your anti-fraud strategy to be able to curb those incidents in the future, reduces your headache in an organization. Blockchain technology. These days, someone can tell you, I've transferred the money to you, for example. Let me use money on transfer. And I've not gotten the alert, for example. But with blockchain technology, everything is transparent. You can't deny anything you do across the blockchain technology. So I believe that organizations, if it suits how they operate or what they do, they should leverage blockchain technology as well. So I'm concluding now. To me, fraud and fraudsters are ever-present elements in every institution. But however, establishing and implementing effective preventive measures can help public and private institutions successfully reduce fraud risk and detect fraudsters from launching various fraud schemes against and within an organization. So like I promised you, I said I would give you some links to some softwares, and these are the links, which I can share the slides with you so you can check them, look at your organization, how it works. Of course, these things are not free. They're very expensive. Technology is not cheap anywhere in the world. But like I said, it's easier to prevent fraud and stop fraudsters than to detect them, because by when you are detecting, a lot of loss and damage has been done already. So I'll share these links, you can check. I mean, they are nothing far-fetched. If you go to Google on your own, choose or punch in the type of tool you're looking for, the list is endless. Depends on how financially buoyant your organization is. And of course, you need to train certain staff to be able to operate this software to help your organization. And lastly, I would say that if you want to combat fraudsters and mitigate fraud in any of your organizations, public or private, I believe that every organization should have trained and qualified and highly skilled fraud examiners. So in a way, I'm encouraging everybody here to try to get the CFA accreditation. I believe that this is being done in collaboration with Rablo Woods, this presentation. So you can contact Rablo Woods. If all we've talked about here, Dr. Orlando talked about fraud management, I'm talking about how to combat fraud. You don't take this away and you just want to start implementing it. It will take you a very long time. So organizations, I believe that you need to have trained CFEs, trained counter fraud professionals to be able to help you implement your fraud management system, and also to help you prevent fraud, and maybe detect when prevention does not work, because it doesn't work every time, but most of the time it does, because you must keep updating your preventive measures. You just don't say this is your anti-fraud strategy or plan and you want it to continue to work. You must adapt to everyday trends, as fraud is evolving. So I encourage you to reach out to Rabble Woods, everyone here present. If you're not a CFE, I believe that you should try to save up, try to get your finances together. You are never going to regret being a CFE. It sets the pace, it changes how you think, it makes you want to improve yourself because honestly, fraud and fraudsters are not going anywhere. They are with us, they are within us, but we have to do all that we can to be able to stop them or mitigate their operations. Thank you very much. I think I'm done. Any questions, I'll be ready to take.
Please, a round of applause, everybody. A round of applause. So, Mr. Adebayo, thank you very much, sir. I was looking forward to your session, and thank you. You delivered to time and to quality. Thank you very much, sir. So,
Thank you.
we've got a couple of questions. Number one, they, somebody said, can fraud be fully combated in public institutions? So that's the first question. So maybe you should note it. Another question here is the polygraph. What's the importance of polygraph and how do you do polygraph in the course of investigation? So that's the second question. Are you noting it, sir? So number one,
Maybe I should just take them as I don't have a pen with me, so let me just,
okay.
it's just easy. I won't spend too long on it. So
I can
can fraud
okay.
be totally mitigated in public institutions? Honestly, if
Yes,
you look at the introduction of my slide, you'll see that fraud is not going anywhere, but you can mitigate it. Mitigation does not mean that you terminate something.
eradication.
It means you take it to the barest minimum that you can handle, that you can manage. That takes you back to fraud management. So if a fraud incident should occur, it should be in a way that it will not crumble your organization. It will not affect the reputation of your organization. It will not stop investors from coming to you. Why? Because you demonstrated that this loss is something you can manage and it's not something that is affecting the spine or the foundation of the organization. So to me, I believe that fraudulent tendencies always keeps coming. And we talked about internal controls as well. In public institutions, there are really no internal controls. I can tell you, I've done a lot of cases and I've seen that nobody really cares when it comes to public finances. But you know what they say, I like to have some sense of humor. When they share it around, there's always no problem. When they don't share it, then there's problem for somebody. So, but for me, it can be curbed, it can be mitigated, but it cannot be killed. Honestly, there's corruption and fraud everywhere, everywhere. So you must just be seen to be effectively combating it, so it doesn't ground you. That's it. And talked about polygraph. You see,
yes.
I am a big fan of technology when it comes to understanding people. Um, Before I started working, where I work, I was polygraphed before I started working, in case you may want to know. So I know a lot of people that did not get the job because they failed the polygraph test. So a polygraph is a way of enhancing integrity test. Let me put it that way, because you set up integrity questions and the person will answer. If you lie, it's highly indicative of what the result says. So to me, it enhances performance of when trying to know your employee, and it should be done routinely. You can reach out to me later. So there's some information I don't want to share here. So I can do an integrity test and also leverage on technology polygraph to let you know. And in court, it helps cases a lot because a case where there's scarcity of evidence, for example, for fraud and corruption, there are times you have scarcity of evidence or insufficiency of evidence to even either open an investigation or to prosecute somebody. A polygraph can tell you where to go because if I lie in response to a particular question, it will help you know where to look at. If I ask you, for example, during a polygraph, have you ever stolen money from the organization before? I mean, your pulse is going to change. If it changes and you fail, your heart rate increases there, then it's likely that you're stealing money from the company before. Going further, and I'll ask you, how many have you, I don't care your answer, I'll ask you, how much have you stolen? How many houses have you bought? All these questions make your heart rate begin to palpitate, and it drives me to the point where I want to go to the public registry, land registry, to check whether properties are in your name or that of your wife or your closest friends. So am I giving too much? So it helps a lot. So it's something to leverage on.
Thank you. Two more, and that's it. So the next one is which that if you have CFP designation, yes, and you're not a chartered accountant, can you practice forensic accounting in Nigeria? So you're not, typically for most people, for them to even think about you when it comes to forensic accounting, even on the ICANN website, they will say that you have to be a chartered accountant. Typically, I know that some people have been able to write to them that what about if you're not a chartered accountant and all that. So somebody wants to know that not being a chartered accountant and having CFE, will ICANN register you as a forensic accountant? So maybe you should answer that, and I'll ask the last one.
I think I can. I can. I'm not sure I can. I don't know what their module is. I'm not an accountant, but I'm not sure it involves forensic accounting. I am not sure. Someone should correct me if I'm wrong. I think accounting and forensic accounting. Forensic accounting is another specialization in accounting, to the best of my understanding. So forensic involves deploying technological tools in carrying out accounting, and not all accountants can do that. So I believe that while you want to get the CFE accreditation, you can inquire from ICANN to be sure of what you want. But you don't have to be, you can be a CFE. Lawyers are CFEs, and accountants are CFEs, auditors are CFEs. Once your field is related and you want to tackle fraud in a certain place, I think CFE, you can take the course and it broadens your scope and your mind. And if you want to be a forensic accountant, I think you need to take specialized courses in that. But if you have a background in accounting, it will help you be able to move faster because I mean it involves okay, I cannot conduct certified. Yeah, okay. So someone says I can also conduct certified forensic certification, which I told you is a specialized area of accounting. And this makes it really clear. So I mean, you can perhaps just take this certification with ICANN. I don't think this will be part of the ICANN big package. These I think Olami can help us on that. But if it's a certification, then I think it's different from the whole ICANN. You being chartered accountant. I think this certification doesn't make you chartered, I guess. So I think you should speak to Olami more on that to guide you. But you can get your CFA credential. I mean, nothing stops you.
Okay. All right. Thank you once again. And lastly, somebody is saying that, I mean, this is something that I see in a lot of organizations, but it'd be nice for me to hear your thoughts and I'll share my thoughts. It says that who should be driving fraud management in an organization? Should it be compliance? Should it be risk management department? Should it be internal control? Should it be internal audits? Who's ideally the best person to be the driver of fraud? Where should the fraud desk, the fraud units, where should it be amongst those four departments? Risk, compliance, internal control, or internal audit?
Well, all the units and departments mentioned, they all play a key role in fraud management and making sure fraudsters and fraud do not thrive in an organization. So I would say that it depends on how the organization wants to style their fraud management system. So for me, I believe that if you want to bring in all those units or departments that I mentioned, compliance, risk management, there should be a coordinating unit or department because these are qualified persons in their rights to checkmate fraud, prevent fraud for the organization. So there should be a coordinating individual or person who should be skilled, highly skilled, to be able to appreciate the contributions and inputs of all these departments, harmonize it, and give a good and robust fraud management system. So, and it could be completely a different unit entirely, but with information sharing and collaboration with all the other units, compliance, risk control, assessment, and all of that. Yeah. So collaboration is just the keyword. It really doesn't matter who leads, in my own opinion. Collaboration is very, very important. Without collaboration, fraudsters, that's another loophole entirely. If you don't share information. So the spirit of collaboration and teamwork is very important. So it depends on how the organization wants to handle it.
Okay. All right. Last but not the least, I promise this is the last one. What did this person say? Uh, what did they say? Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. In organizations, it can be in any of those departments. It should just be a defined unit. It shouldn't be in audits. Otherwise, it will only look at it post something. I think the best is either compliance or internal control. Definitely, it should be in one of those locations as it is. Yes, you mentioned the triangle of crime, but there's also mom. There's also something called mom, which is the motive, the mom of crime. It's a motive, opportunity, and there must be means, right? So you mentioned the triangle, but there's also the concept of mom. how do they align? Because I mean, crime is at the most, I mean, you know what it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, you see, motive has a place inherently to play in the fraud triangle ordinarily. The only new element I see here, the last word, can you say
The means
the
is the
last word?
means is the means or the
Means, thank
means or
you.
the
You see,
ability to be able to do it. Yes, yes.
yes, now, so you see, after Cressy developed the fraud triangle, there are other people that developed other theories for fraud. So the means now falls under what I call something called the fraud rectangle. It was developed by Wolf and Herbstman. Now, fraud triangle agrees with the three elements by Kersey, but they bring in the element of capability, which is means, which you've talked about. So it means that there are times that a fraudster or fraud may not be successfully committed or perpetrated when the fraudster does not have the capability or the means. So if you look at cybercrime, for example, or a cyber-enabled fraud within an organization, you must be tech savvy. You must know how to operate a computer or be familiar with technological tools for you to be able to use or leverage the internet or the cyberspace to commit fraud. So there are times that you need capability or the means to be able to do it. So, and the means at times could be, it doesn't have to be cyber related. It could be, for example, a janitor, someone that has access to maybe the person in charge of cash in the bank, for example. Of course, you have the key to the vault. So the person must have the means to do that. But other people may be able to collaborate with whoever has the key. I mean, there's conspiracy when you want to commit fraud or crime at times. So means is very important, but I don't think it's every time. There are some crimes that are fraud that people will say you must be educated. And most fraud that I've researched in my years, I realized that education doesn't really play a part. I mean formal education. That's what I mean. I think all you need is a skill. So sometimes, and a good number of times these days, because of technology, skills, that's means and capability plays a key role as well. But the most important way to understand fraud and fraudsters, I think it is still the fraud triangle.
Good. Once again, everybody, a big thank you to Mr. Flores here. So once again, please in the chat room, thank you very much. Follow him on LinkedIn. Is a popular and a person, so it's good for you to follow him, and I'm sure you will get all sorts of insights, or maybe when he does a post or one thing or the other. Once again, Mr. Flores, thank you very much for taking out
Thank you.
of
It
the
was an
very
honor. Thank you.
schedule. Hopefully, this one step will help the in combating this whole issue, because it's a big deal. It's a big deal in every organization, as I said. Whether you're talking to a banker, you're doing pensions, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. There's systemic and fraud everywhere, and the idea is for us to be able to help the entire community to know what to do to ensure that these things are reduced as it is. So once again, thank you very much, sir.
Thank
God
you. It's a
bless you.
pleasure. Thank you.
All right, good. So everybody, thank you very much. We'll put some things in the chat room. If you've registered and you're here, so everybody, if you look in the chat room, a big thank you to Rablo Hoods. Rablo Hoods are the ones that brought in Mr. Soares, because I mean, we didn't even have enough power, enough influence to be able to bring someone like him here on the call. So Rablo Hoods were the ones that dragged him and brought him onto this call for us. So once again, a big thank you to Rablo Hoods. If you check in the chat room, their website is there. I put their website even here. They have a registration, and you can also go and just become a member of ACFE. You can do that even if you're not certified. Of course, maybe you need to be certified so that you can sound as intelligent as Mr. Soares here, as all that, right? So maybe at least that will help. But you can even just be a member of the association. I'm a member of that association. I've been a member for a very long time. I enjoy reading their magazines. They have all sorts of things that they put out there. Like even just as a practitioner, as a professional, you kind of need insights into a lot of those things, and it's useful as it is. So you can find the price. If it's a Rablos, reach out to them directly, fill the form on their website. And if it is ACFE, you can all, if you go onto the website, you'll be able to find how much is the annual dues. As I said, I've been paying the dues for at least 5 years, and I'm just happy to pay it because when I log on to it, there's always something very useful for the work that I'm doing, whether you're certified or not. But of course, it's better to be certified so that one day you can also be international and highly paid. Once again, like Mr. Suarez, we are all learning from someone like from someone like him. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. It's been great to have you all here. You can spread the word. We'll put it on YouTube. We'll share the link, and then we'll even do you one better. We will give you a certification, a free foundation certification, only for the people who have attended this session. We'll give you a free foundation certification on fraud management and forensic investigation. So we'll give you a foundation course. We'll share the link with you. And if you pass it, you'll be able to generate your certificate as it is. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great weekend. And we look forward to having you all in future sessions. Thank you. We'll put
Thank
all
you.
the details. Mr. Saris, once again, follow him on LinkedIn. We'll also share, my team will share in the chat room the Instagram for A4S, and you've also seen some of the information from Rablowhoods. You can follow them on Instagram and on all sorts of other platforms. Thank you very much, everyone. God bless you. Have a
Thank you.
great
Bye.
weekend.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cheers.